My name is Richard Anderson, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of ShareVault. I would like to thank you for joining our webinar today, and I will be introducing our speaker momentarily. This is the 10th in ShareVault's webinar series, and today's topic is Protecting Intellectual Property in the Borderless Enterprise. Today's presentation is especially timely given the rapid pace and global impact of innovation across countless industries. Our speaker will introduce how companies are increasingly collaborating with channel partners, strategic allies, vendors, investors, regulators, and government agencies in manners which require agility coupled with effective custodianship over ideas, content, and electronic communication. There will be a question and answer session following the presentation. Questions which are not addressed during this forum will be responded to via email after the webinar. As we endeavor to make these webinars increasingly useful and informative, we would very much appreciate your response to a follow-up survey which will be sent to you after today's webinar concludes. And lastly, our speaker has offered to make today's presentation available for download. You will be notified by email when the presentation is posted and login procedures will be provided to you. You'll then be able to access the presentation by logging into a ShareVault secure document sharing system. We at ShareVault specialize in supporting the types of collaborative business processes and events which our speaker will cover today. Now, let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce Stefan Adler from H3 Consulting. Stefan is a noted authority in litigation support and electronic discovery and has over 20 years of experience assisting companies in managing large, complex document review projects. Welcome, Stefan.
This is Stefan Adler. The borderless enterprise is increasingly important in an emerging business client. Specifically, what we're seeing is companies are working in multiple locations. They are working very closely with multiple organizations. Your own company may be doing a vast majority of work in different locations, not only in different offices within your company, but your own employees. Some of them may be based at home. Others of them may be occasionally working from home remotely when they're on the road. Your virtual internal team also is accessing from different locations, whether it's contractors or vendors that are functioning as part of your organization. And then finally, as you move down the stream in the business process, you'll see vendors and marketing partners, and then also as you move towards mergers and acquisitions and other kinds of financing events, investors, law firms, banking partners, a variety of people involved in due diligence processes. Not only are these folks from different companies and different locations accessing your intellectual property, they're doing it with a wider variety of devices. It used to be that things were being accessed via desktop PCs connected to some type of LAN. That has continued, but certainly with the emergence of devices like tablets, smartphones, text, a variety of flexible devices are now using your data in a more and more broad set of circumstances. Historically, your IT team was controlling the vast majority of use of your intellectual property, but the expansion of the team and the types of devices used to access your intellectual property has changed that. Let's talk a little bit about how this changing environment has the same set of basic business goals, but a new set of risks that are associated. Back to basics. Why are you collaborating in the first place? Well, collaborative partners give you access to a different set of skills. They're specialists in functions that you may only do occasionally, and they can, in fact, add a lot of value because they do it regularly. Partners give you access to a whole new set of markets without building a full team that has expertise there. The combination of these things means that you're able to deploy in a broader environment with greater force and effectiveness without nearly the investment that would be demanded if you did this internally. Finally, specialized manufacturing partners, development partners are able to shorten your timeline in important phases such as prototype, ramp up for full distribution. Increasingly, with the fast-moving environment that we see globally, having shorter timelines and greater flexibility is critical in being able to succeed. as with all opportunities, new risks are developed. So Coca-Cola, for instance, they keep their formula on a single slip of paper in a safe in Atlanta. This is not an option for you. So here are some of the risks that exist for most businesses today. Data needs to be stored electronically so that it can be mobile and shared with different parties. Again, as mentioned earlier, data is being accessed in more IT environments, and the people, as we've mentioned, not only are there more of them, but they are working in different organizations that have different data standards. I'd like to talk with you about a few different examples of current events which have shown what happens when these risks aren't properly managed. So specifically, while most IT theft is not being widely reported, it creates a risk to companies to disseminate it. There are some rather public examples that we're going to share today. In February of 2010, WikiLeaks posted the leading edge of some 250,000 documents that were sensitive from a military and foreign policy standpoint. These documents were obtained by an in-house IT professional who had access to unencrypted versions of data that were able to be extracted in enormous volumes and shared publicly. In the same year, Motorola brought suit against a manufacturing company in another country. Former employees of Motorola had stolen designs for important hardware, and the original versions, including Motorola watermarks, had been shared with a new organization. There are a variety of other examples. There's so many of them that, in fact, it's become such a clear business issue that Congress is currently looking at different legislation, the recent PIPA and SOPA acts, which are currently under debate, likely to be modified. But while we are focusing on the concerns about this legislation, what's clear is that there's a bipartisan consensus and a clear consensus in the business community that this is such a broad risk that action is needed. Let's talk about steps that you can take today. These new risks involve organizations facing up and developing a new plan, and really mostly just updating the existing plans that they have to manage their team effectively. SaaS, software as a service, is increasingly the preferred solution for being able to manage IP securely. SaaS, software as a service, works very simply. You hire a different company, they manage a specialized software with a high level of security in a central location that you can then access remotely from any place that you are doing business. Their team then manages all the resources that are necessary to ensure that the software is functioning to your needs with the level of security and functionality that you demand. The functionality is the first starting point. You need to have both the steps that your users need and a security that actually meets your business demands in more or less a workflow that looks like what you're already doing. You don't want to have to reconfigure what you do to match unconfigurable or rigid software. That would be the technology tail wagging the business dog. A couple important pieces of functionality include IRM, Information Rights Management. Information Rights Management is a way of clustering individual users into groups that have similar rights. By being able to do that, you can globally manage groups of people to access the appropriate pieces of information when they're allowed to use them and only perform functions on them that you consider appropriate. Digital Rights Management, or DRM, provides file-level security. This gives a great level of protection. It can protect documents from being printed. If someone can share a copy of them, they're stored in an encrypted format. So even if they have managed to get a copy of it after their period of appropriate use expires, the documents cannot be used. The most common example of this would be iTunes, a broadly accepted, highly secure data storage format. moving beyond individual documents and individual users, good system reporting is a really important component of being able to effectively manage usage. With good reporting, what you can do is you can do global evaluations to make sure that you understand who is accessing data and when. You can actually, when you're in due diligence phases, you can see which documents people are looking at, what they're paying attention to, giving you insight that you didn't previously have into how information is being considered. One important best practice, because this will involve some level of change for you to move into a different environment, is start making the move early. Before you get a huge team, it's much, much easier to get people to learn new work habits then. It will also save you a significant amount of money and disruption as you move through your work. In addition to the processes and software we've just talked about, the most important part is the people that are going to be responsible for making your business successful using this new system. Your IT team has all the skills that are necessary to manage this. So they're frequently involved in selecting the SaaS system and then managing the reporting as it comes in. It's very similar to work that they're already doing based on their existing systems. Frequently, IT will be tasked with user creation and access management. Overseeing the connectivity, because after all, when you're accessing things via the internet, it's important to make sure that you have the appropriate connectivity to make sure that you have the system performance you need to get your work done. And then finally, the SaaS vendor will be the partner that will be providing the software you'll actually be using for your day-to-day work. One important step in developing this plan is that your process in SaaS should look like the processes that you're already using. Take the same steps, same team, just move them into a different environment. It starts with knowing who keeps the trains running on time. So the existing business managers that are coordinating your project are the best first choice to be managing the work now that it's being done in SaaS. Again, can't reiterate enough. Get up and running in a SaaS environment earlier. It'll be easier for you down the line. And it also helps you to do this in phases. A small pilot group is always helpful. It's an easier implementation. If there's any things you need to do to kind of streamline some bottlenecks, this is a good time to get started when it's only a few folks who are being impacted. Day-to-day management of the plan, once you've gotten started, is relatively straightforward. The first question that folks ask is, when do I start moving data, a new document specifically, into a SaaS environment? The answer is pretty straightforward: when you're about to share it, because the SaaS layer is providing the security for collaborative uses. That's the right point to do it. In practical terms, certainly users are going to continue to have draft documents on their laptop, desktop, as long as that device has appropriate security that your IT is comfortable with. That's perfectly fine. But instead of sharing final documents and shared drafts via email or other uses, share them in SaaS instead. When you're in your pilot phase especially, pay a little extra attention to actually look for bottlenecks and talk about it with the team that's actually planning the process. It's good to get ahead of these bottlenecks early. If you don't get ahead of them, your users may end up trying to find their own workarounds to get their work done quickly and efficiently. The most common thing that we see is that folks start sending documents around via email, which can be a non-secure environment. So help them out, make sure the process works, and you'll avoid them inventing a solution which creates risks to your intellectual property. We wanted to talk about a few specific examples about how you would blend these capabilities together. The most common time that we see folks moving into a SaaS environment with the kind of online capabilities that protect intellectual property is during some kind of merger or financing event. So Due diligence materials will be created, loaded into an online storage area. They can be grouped typically into folders. That lines up with how people are currently organizing paper documents in deal rooms. That allows users then to be let in. That can be, again, venture capitalists, investment bankers, various acquisition partners or targets. They can go in and evaluate the documents. By clustering these users in groups, you can make sure that entire categories of people are not allowed to download documents that they're not entitled to. And again, you can continue to track either as a group or by individual to make sure that you understand that this functionality is being managed. You can then spawn different areas within the deal room that can allow different groups of people to do subsequent work. So in later phases of after due diligence is done, you can go and you can start negotiating contracts. You can do technical evaluations. A variety of other functions can be stored, again, in work phases that look like what you're doing already. Biotech uses a different set of steps. They can create sub-areas within a deal room for research. And then separately, they can do additional phases such as preclinical testing, allowing their internal lab team to share a common set of reports and lab notes inside this secure environment. The folks that are involved in later clinical testing won't have access to that phase of work unless you choose to grant them access. Finally, you can even allow regulators to come in and access secure data. Once you're done with the testing phase, by combining the various IRM and DRM functionality, you can shut off their access after the project is concluded. Hardware, you can launch separate areas that would allow the design and prototype. Then as you bring in bidding partners who may run your assembly line, they can examine the prototype and only allow the subset of prototype materials for the components that they'll be working on. Similarly, you can move through different phases in manufacturing, and by breaking this down into different areas, you can preserve the history of all the different areas, work phases that you've gone through. One specific success story involves litigation. I wanted to share we had there was a recent project where a client needed to do simultaneous distribution of one common data set with over 50 parties. It was a somewhat hostile environment, and so there was contentiousness if different parties got the data at different times because it was a secure distribution of data. The old system involved creating more than 50 hard drives. They all needed to be encrypted. They were all being shipped via FedEx and other delivery methods. By moving this into a SaaS deal room, one copy was made available to everybody. Everybody could log in simultaneously. It shortened the distribution schedule by 2 to 3 days and reduced a whole host of conflicts that were associated with idiosyncratic distribution of 50-plus versions of the same pool of data. With that, I'd like to turn over the demonstration to John Napoli. John, here you go.
Great, lovely. Thank you so much, Stefan. Appreciate that. So what I'd like to do at this point is I'd like to give everyone a quick look at how ShareVault addresses many of the concerns that Stefan's raised, and specifically in regards to protecting your intellectual property. So I want to talk about digital rights management and how we protect documents. Then I'll touch on how you can securely share your sensitive information with your interested third parties. I want to touch on how easy it is to maneuver and use ShareVault. It's basically built around its functionality, and how we can get our ShareVault owners up quickly and easily and have their platform ready to use in as few as 5 clicks. And then we'll finish up with the reporting tool and show you how you can gain useful insight into your third party's interest in any given file. Okay, so from here, I am jumping over to my ShareVault login screen. As you guys can see, this is a fictional company that I've created, an Acme company, and I begin to access my ShareVault simply by entering my secure username and password, as each individual will have. You'll notice the first thing I see when I log in is I'm taken to a welcome page. I've opted for a confidentiality agreement here, but this information can be completely customized or modified. You can drop in an NDA or anything that's going to be suitable for your project or transaction. So once I agree, or once your end users, your third parties agree, they are immediately taken and welcomed to the documents section of the ShareVault. So this is where the due diligence process begins. This is where the document investigation takes off. You'll notice I have most of my ShareVault is pre-built. It's arranged. I have my documents sorted in the middle of my page here, and you'll notice I have them sorted by index, which I can modify here. Beneath each document, I have a document overview, and this allows me to decipher on the documents page, as a ShareVault owner, mind you, quickly and easily where these documents can be located and who has access to view them. On the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll notice that ShareVault arranges documents in a tag structure. This is unique to ShareVault. Nobody is doing this. The reason we use tags rather than folders is it gives the ShareVault owner more advantages, particularly when an individual file needs to be nested in more than one location. So this tagging structure, tagging limits the need for republication of identical files and documents, and this actually saves our ShareVault owners much time, much problems, much headache, and much investment, as you can imagine. From here, in this specific project, I'm going to move over to our users and groups. It's time for me to add people and invite them in to begin their due diligence and begin their learning of the information. So this is where I'm going to be inviting my users by adding user. Once I do that and drag them into their appropriate group, I can begin setting up the document permissions and restrictions, and this relates directly to our digital rights management discussion. So for instance, if I double-click on my Worthington Capital group and recall this group, you'll notice that everybody that is inside this Worthington Capital group has the same rights and restrictions that apply. The checkboxes here on the left-hand side control what's visible, and you can notice I can select, deselect at any time, at any level. And the policies on the right-hand side decide at what level the users can access the files. So you'll notice most of these files have a full security policy, which includes a brief synopsis down at the bottom. And you'll notice some of these tags I've permission to add a PDF only or a print only access, which gives some more flexibility to my project and to my end users. So now from here, let's imagine that we need to add some more documentation to our ShareVault. We need to invite some more people to view some more information. We'll navigate back to the documents page. We'll open up our publishing tool. And from here, you'll see just a few clicks how I can get my information that lives either in my desktop, my hard drive, into my ShareVault. So I've got some files. In particular, I'm interested in this intellectual property file that I need to publish. I'll simply drag, drop, minimize this so everyone can view. All of my files are being announced, and then in order to have them mirrored in a tag structure, I will drag my tag over, my high-level tag over, announce it to the tags on the left-hand side, and then simply publish my documents. So as this is going on in the background, you'll notice my uploading file status appears, and I can continue doing work in my ShareVault. I get green checks to let me know everything was published successfully. I OK that, and I am set to start permissioning those files to my third-party users. So I want to finish up on reports and show you how you can gain insight, useful insight, as to what's been viewed by whom in your ShareVault. You'll notice I have two options: an activity summary, which is more of a broad brush view for approach for the ShareVault owners who want to approach it as the audit as a group overview. My activity list gives me much more of a deep dive, and you'll notice here I can do a date-time search from the beginning, from the initiation of my ShareVault. I can search via activity. I can actually search via team or via individual if I wish, by expanding these. And I can also search by either tag, subtag, or actual individual file. I can export this information or print this information or simply have it recalled to me directly here, as you guys can see below. File information, ID of the file, IP address of the end user, additional information, which includes all the pertinent information in terms of documentation, overview, and structure. So at this point, we're open to taking some questions. And if you're interested in a more comprehensive demonstration, obviously there's a lot more we'd like to show you. We're going to be following up with all the individuals here, and we'd like to speak with them about their needs in the coming days.
Thank you, John. As mentioned at the beginning of today's session, questions which we are unable to address during our allotted time will be answered via email. So the first question we have is, other than obvious patents, copyrights, and technology know-how, what other intellectual property types should be protected?
What I am seeing my clients concerned with is, in addition to those forms of intellectual property, there's a lot of implementation and process documents, so the flow charts that document what the process is, test scripts, help documents, anything that really tells you how to make a business process function is increasingly important in this competitive environment, and they're looking to more forcefully protect it.
Okay, the next question is, can the protections of the Patent Office be supported if provisional patents are disclosed to third parties during a due diligence process?
While most of my clients and most of my consultants are lawyers, I am not. So what I'd like to talk about is, some of my clients generally view a thorough process that is defensible and measurable as putting them in a much better circumstance. And so where a patent is pending, they still want to manage the highest level of due diligence, and they still want to have the highest level of IP security to ensure that whichever direction they go, they are protected.
Okay, this one begins with a comment followed by a question. It is clear that the outsourcing model, i.e. use of SaaS, is now prevalent. What are some of the challenges that companies face in having to outsource to meet this growing business need of data access from expanding teams and services?
The biggest challenges to that are primarily operational. So on a security standpoint, you are going to need to validate that the security of your SaaS partner is in place. Again, that's pretty well understood. The operational challenges are making sure that you have not only do you have enough bandwidth to your SaaS partner, but that there's no kind of connectivity hiccups that are causing problems as your users are actually trying to use it. As far as different kinds of devices, the more established platforms are increasingly more and more reliable for high productivity use. But as you look, there's a pretty rapidly changing smartphone market out there, and folks are inventing new kinds of connectivity. New software tools to access with. So some of those things are where my clients see the biggest hiccups. The good news is, one person using, whatever the new BlackBerry platform is not going to drive the productivity of your whole team. So I recommend that you put your best efforts into optimizing performance for the most for the common platforms that your IT team already knows about.
Okay, the next question is one that's I guess most appropriate for John, who gave us the demo. And the question is ShareVault compatible with the Mac?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Actually, unlike a lot of other providers out there, ShareVault is compatible with Mac for both the end user to view files, but also, more importantly, for the ShareVault owner to actually upload information into ShareVault. And we're seeing that's becoming more and more prevalent, obviously, as the Mac becomes more prevalent. So not only that, we're also going to be compatible with more and more tablets, as you're seeing out there as well. So we have a lot more on the horizon, a lot more to offer.
Okay. The next question actually was one of a little bit more on the logistical side. A member joined a few minutes late and was asking if the presentation will be made available later, and the answer to that is yes. If any others are wondering the same thing, and we'll make note of that again toward the end of the Q&A session also. From a topical question standpoint, this one asks, does tracking access to IP documents by specific users provide adequate legal protection in the case of unauthorized use?
Again, deferring to my clients and the experience that I've had with them, I mean, this is certainly an evolving area of the law, but one trend is very clear, which is all of my clients are asking for a consistent, testable, and auditable process. What they don't want to find themselves in is having to defend carelessness, and the market is evolving as we learn more and more about using these kinds of systems. So obvious things that you need to be managed are having a clearly vetted process, and you need to be managing and monitoring and developing reports that show that you're actually following that process. So it's one thing to say, you know, your practices have to line up with policies and procedures, and the process has to be designed to reduce operational risks. So if you have a good audit trail, and that does include tracking by individual users, and then you know these are all different reasons why the management reports are going to be an important part of any system that you use. But those things just put them in a much stronger position. There are examples where carelessness has resulted in people being stripped of protections.
We don't see any more questions in the question screen. If any others would like to ask, we'll just give that a few seconds here. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap things up for the day. Okay, it looks like we've received the questions that members of the audience wanted to ask. So to conclude, we want to just thank you all very much for spending time with us today and exploring this very important topic. We want to thank Stefan for the excellent presentation and for bringing some critical domain experience to this discussion. And again, point out that the recording of the webinar will be made available to you, and you'll be notified via email when it's ready. And to all of you who've joined from many parts of the world, we want to thank you very much for joining us today.